Welcome back to the Sportsnaut interview. Today we're joined by one of my favorite guests, former NFL executive, of course, host of the GM Shuffle podcast, also the Lombardi line on VSiN, and best-selling author, Football Done Right. If you don't already have the book, make sure you grab it. It is one of the best ones out there. Michael, we're going to talk about Super Bowl, and I want to get your experience here. You worked for two legendary coaches, Bill Walsh, Bill Belichick, of course, others too. But when it comes to the Super Bowl and having been around some of the greatest minds in the game, preparing for this game, the strategy that goes behind it, talk to me a little bit about working for those coaches and kind of what the buildup is to Big Sunday.
Well, I think the work is done the week before you go to the game. But I think more than anything is you want the players to be relaxed. You want them to not get caught up in the moment, to not get caught up in the big game and the noise and all the stuff that goes on outside the game. And you got to almost treat it like it's week 4 of the NFL season, which we know it's not. And that's a hard thing to do, but you have to kind of try to do that. Walsh, in his first Super Bowl that I wasn't a part of in '79, he pretended he was the bellhop carrying bags, right? And then in '84, I watched him lay on the floor in the locker room. I can still see him laying there with his hands behind his head, just relaxed. And he was just trying to send a message that, fellas, if we do what we have to do, we'll win the game. So I think a lot of it's that. And you know, you can't put pressure on this play or this game or this has to happen. It's a long game. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be ebb and flow. We're not going to win it in the first quarter. We're not going to lose it in the first quarter. So I think there's messaging that has to go through it in terms of how you want to approach it.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, you look at these two coaches, of course, Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan going in. And in your book, Football Done Right, you talked about the importance of leadership. It's also something you talk about on the Daily Coach, of which I am a big fan of. You look at these two styles of leaders heading into this game in Las Vegas on Sunday. Talk about the differences between the two and the commonalities which have allowed them to be so successful at this level.
Well, they're different in how they approach it, right? But they get to the same place, accountability. You know, making the players work hard, believing practice execution becomes game reality. I mean, these are two really well-coached teams, and I think Kansas City more than ever, since the loss to the Raiders on Christmas Day that embarrassed Andy Reid when he turned it over twice for 14 points and essentially lost the game. I don't think the Raiders won it. The Chiefs lost it by those turnovers and those mistakes. He decided no more. We're not doing that anymore. Since then he's thrown it 100 and he's run it 130, thrown it 132 times, rushed for 112 times, balanced it out. He's no longer trying to have a one-play drive, a two-play drive like in that Raider game where Mahomes was holding the football. It's about we're going to put 7-play drives together. We're going to score. We're going to take the points. We've averaged 24 points in the last 4 games, counting the Cincinnati game. Only given up 14. So they've gotten Mahomes to accept the responsibility that it's not 40-point night. It's better to have a 20-point night with 10 assists. That's coaching. And I think that's one of Reid's strengths is adapting to your team. And I think Kyle has done that as well. This is going to be a challenge for Kyle because the defense hasn't played well. You know, during the regular season, they only allowed 5 yards per play. During the playoffs, they're giving up 5.9 yards per play. During the regular season, the opposing offense only averaged 9.6 yards per completion. During the playoffs, they're at 12.3. So there's a lot of work to be done in this week of cleaning things up defensively for this 49er team.
When you look at these two teams, Michael, I mean, you were a player evaluator. You know this better than anybody. We've heard all year about how stacked that San Francisco roster is on both sides of the ball. Then on the other side, we heard about the Chiefs and their deficiencies, the wide receiver, the offense not being what it was before. When you look at this matchup and you look at the players involved, and starting with the quarterbacks, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, we know what he is, of course. But then on the other side, you have Brock Purdy. And in my view, Brock Purdy, a lot of people sitting there calling him a game manager. When you look at these two quarterbacks, the matchup there, what is it? What do you see?
Well, I see two quarterbacks that effectively run their offense really well. Mahomes averaged 7 yards during the regular season per attempt. During the playoffs, he averages 7 yards. Purdy averaged almost 10 yards per attempt. That's unheard of. He was so good. Now, you know, Mahomes has adjusted his game, and Purdy has adjusted his game. He's run the ball, ran for 51 yards last week, you know, and so they've adjusted what they do. I think really that the key for the success of the Chiefs have been in their offensive line. The Raiders kicked their butt up front in that game, and they couldn't block anybody. They couldn't block any Raider defensive front guy. Now they're playing much better. You talk about the 49ers talent level. The talent level on the 49ers is all in their defensive line, their front seven. That's where it all is. That's where they put their money, and that's where it should be. But they haven't played that way. Bosa has 2 sacks. Nobody else does. Chase Young's getting thrown all over the place, and people are running the ball at him. I mean, they only allowed 10 rushing touchdowns, Scott, all year. And so far in the playoffs, they've allowed 5 in 2 games. So that tells you about teams. And if they allow rushing touchdowns to Pacheco and the Chiefs, they won't beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, and that Chiefs defense, you look at it, I think it's the stat is what they've given up 3 points in the fourth quarter throughout the playoffs. Talk a little bit about what Steve Spagnuolo has done there and that unit, and how if the offense has fallen off just a little bit in some way, the defense has more than made up for it.
Well, the defense has been sensational. I mean, they've only given up 10 points in the second half in the last 3 games, right? And they've scored 46 of their 70 points in the first half. So they've been good. They played from behind in Buffalo, and they played from behind in Cincinnati, the first game, the game that I count. Every stat that I'm giving you is related to when Andy Reid went home Christmas Day and said, enough, we're changing. And he did. And so they've been very effective, and they've made you try to work the ball. They've been timely with their blitzes. They know teams will get impatient. Baltimore ran the ball 16 times against a team that was asking them to run the ball. They run power twice for 30 yards. Quarterback power in an unbalanced look. Quarterback power regular power out of a regular look. Get 30 yards, never call it again. So they took advantage of that. And I think that took away from the Ravens' ability to throw the ball down the field with their play action pass game. Kyle's going to not get away from that. Again, this game, Scott's going to come down to really simple things. It's going to come down to, does Steve Wilks handle the script from Andy Reid? Because they start fast and have been starting fast. And can Kyle Shanahan start fast? The 49ers haven't scored a touchdown in the first quarter all playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting there too. Who's got the edge, you think, coming into this game in Las Vegas?
Well, I think the Chiefs are playing better right now. The 49ers have won 2 games, but the 49ers are here, and they have to count their blessings because they have gotten here without the strength of their team, which is the defensive front. I mean, typically when the Niners win, their front dominates. They haven't dominated either game.
Amazing. Michael, before we let you go, the coaching carousel, we saw the last domino fall, Dan Quinn in Washington. When you look at this round of coaching hires, what's different about the process, number one? And number two, from those that were hired, what can we take away from that as far as changing moods amongst these owners and GMs and hiring coaches across the NFL?
Well, I think what we learned is collaboration's the key word, right? Collaboration's the key word. Everybody wants to have a collaborative effort, yet the 2 teams in the Super Bowl are not collaborative. Kyle Shanahan runs the 49ers. Andy Reid runs the Chiefs. There's collaboration from within, but there's one leader. I think what we've seen in this offseason is more of a collaborative. We want to empower everybody. That works if you're in the Dave Clark 5, not if you're on the NFL. So we'll see how that goes. I think the Harbaugh hire is great. I think that's going to be really what they needed. They needed toughness. They needed physical toughness, mental toughness. I think he'll do a great job there. Everyone else you're just a little bit unsure of. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine. Forget my relationship with Belichick because I think he's the greatest coach of all time. But Mike Vrabel not coaching after what he was able to do in Tennessee, to me, slaps at everybody wanting collaboration. Hello?
Yeah, gotcha.
I lose you? Okay.
No, you got me. Sorry about that. There's a little hiccup there. A last question for you, Michael. You mentioned Coach Belichick, and obviously you know him better than anybody. You work side by side with him and have a ring with him as well. If you look at where he's at right now, what can we expect from Bill Belichick? I mean, he's so close to that record. I don't know that matters to him. I'm sure it does. Anybody wants to excel. But what do you see in the future for Coach Belichick after this year if he does sit out this year?
If he sits out this year, which all indications seem to think that's the case, he'll work as if he's still working. He'll prepare for the draft. He'll prepare for free agency. He won't miss a beat. So when it's time next year to talk to an owner, he'll be ready to go as if he didn't need it. Because for Belichick, he loves the process. He doesn't necessarily love anything other than the process.
Amazing stuff. All right, Michael Lombardi, thank you so much for spending the time with us and enjoy the Super Bowl.